Hi, everybody, and welcome to our special For the People of the People, where we are going to discuss and talk about the state of black culture, what's going on right now, because there's a lot that we need to talk about. There's a lot that's going on, and there's a big divide between the black community. So, we're going to really have those difficult conversations today. And we have a couple of different panelists. We got a couple people that's going to pop in. And we had Miss Frankie French, who was supposed to be on. She is not on due to some personal issues that she had, but we have another person who filled in. So today it is myself, Lise Winnie. We have Ryan Troy. We have Miss Karen L. And we have Alexander Sutton here today. So we're going to get things started. But before we can do that, I got to play an intro for you like I always do. You know how I do. Because that's how we do on Millennials Anonymous. All right. So let's get this started off. And we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of things to get to right now. So, how did we get here? How did we get here with policing? With the things that we see on the news? Because this is not new. This has been going on for quite some time. But how did we get here? You want to take this, Ryan?
Come back to me. Come back to me.
Okay, Karen, do you want to take this?
How did we get here? I mean, I was here a couple weeks ago when Ahmaud was murdered, right? So I don't feel like we just got here out of the blue. I don't know about anybody else, but I didn't just get here. I was already mad. I was already angry. I already knew how many names there were on the list of people that were murdered by police officers in America. So I was already mad. I think, how do we get here today? I think everybody just got as mad as me, I guess, and was like, all right, let's say something, let's do something. We're not letting this one slide. But I think we've been here. I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but we've been here. This has been an ongoing struggle for years and years and years. And it kind of like, as a black community, I guess maybe we feel like we can't do anything or we can't say anything. So we've kind of just been angry in our t-shirts and our hashtags and our emotions. And I think finally we all just got to the place where we were just like, that's it.
True, very, very true. I have to agree with you. I think that we've been here for a minute. This is not the first time. We've had Rodney King. We've had so countless others, even before the last couple of years. So we had Trayvon Martin. We had Mike Brown. So this has been coming. It's been boiling up. Now, as far as us with policing, I don't know if we got here because I'm not going to say we ignored it, but I think as a society, not necessarily black people, but as a society, I think society ignored the red flags.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of society is that we think that that's normal part of society, right? So we're just continuing what we know and the patterns that we've always seen. So we've almost become almost like, we're not codependent, but it's almost like if that's normal, then it's our normal, right? And so that's what we just assumed was normal. And so we didn't fight back probably as much as we could have because we felt in some cases defenseless.
I agree. I agree with that. So we have someone else who actually popped in and joined us. We have Kent, the library guy, who is here with us as well today. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. Tuning in from Kankakee, Illinois. So it's a privilege to be on. Glad to be able to get in here and get into talking with you guys.
Absolutely. We were just talking about how did we get here where we are now with policing and being fed up with police. How do you feel that we've got here? Like, how did we get here where now it's like this turning point?
Well, I think we've always been at a turning point when it has came to police. Because before we had police, we have slave catchers. We had patrolmen who kept slaves or African descendants slaves in order. So we've always had this relationship, a dysfunctional relationship with a system of protection and servitude that was sponsored for people who had the power of the dollar. And so over the years of us becoming property to actual citizens and all the things that's happened in between, police have had they've had different relationships to us. And predominantly it's been of one of where they made sure we stayed in line. We stayed in the parameters within the system. And then in the last few years, I would say, man, maybe the last 40, maybe 50 years, we found ourselves being able to become a part of that system, the policing system, the law system in that regard. And we're still outnumbered when it comes to having that particular voice that says so and that right. And it goes with the laws that protect police from us being able to defend ourselves. So I think this has been years and the years and the years and the years of making, even down to our education. I'm 33, and the first thing I could remember being educated on when it came to police was, hey, people that look like you were in this category, and then there were these people who oversaw the land and protect the law, and they kept you in line. That's the very first thing we're taught when it comes to policing. And so we look at our community, we look at the things that's happened over the years before our time. Me being a crack baby from the crack baby era, policing was a different energy in the 90s and in the early 2000s. So it's years and years of buildup, and then for us as a people, many of us have had different relationships with police. Some have grown up in the projects, in the urban areas, and then some of us have grown up in the suburbs and have been a part of a system where the police were more transparent and they were involved with the community. So it's a long time coming.
I agree with that. But would you say that's the growing voice that we have for disbanding and defunding the police? Which is a question I want to kind of propose to everybody. Are you for or against disbanding or defunding the police? I will start with Alex. The floor is yours.
Okay, so I kind of want to touch a little bit on the previous thing.
Okay.
So when you said how do we get here, I think you were trying to adjust how exactly with the rioting, the looting, the protesting, the media attention, and stuff like that. So I think the reason why it's probably a little bit more in your face right now is because it's an election year. If you ever pay attention during election years, the media definitely tends to put a lot more energy into black justices because it plays into the political um, purposes of whatever media organizations try to do, which normally media is most predominantly liberal. So you won't see Fox News and conservative commentators typically cover that type of stuff, but you will see liberal corporations do it around this time. So with that being said, if that video never hit TV, I don't think the movement would be as large as it is right now.
Agreed.
Agreed.
So I think that's the reason why we're here right now, simply because it's election year. Once the president gets chosen, black attention of injustices goes down, and it's almost just literally in pockets and corners of the internet. People say what they have to say, and then they move on. So in terms of should we disband or defund the police, I actually heard Sonny Houston talk about this on The View today about what all like this one, and it was another D something that she had affiliated with these two terms. I am for. I'm not for disbanding. The reason why I'm not for specifically for disbanding is because disbanding would mean you get rid of it and then everyone will come back and stuff like that. Have to reapply for the jobs and stuff like that. I feel like police are important in order for us to have the safety and the law enforcement where it needs to be. So I'm more so for defunding, possibly, if we could allocate those resources into different communities that needed, or different types of affiliations that needed it, like nursing or mental health or stuff like that, because that's what that term means. Basically, taking funds that the taxpayers pay to the police and allocating them to different affiliations. So I'm probably more so for that, but I don't think that that would change police behavior.
Okay. Karen, are you for or against either defunding the police or disbanding them?
I don't believe we should disband the police. I do think they serve some good. I don't think
Okay.
they're all bad. I do think they do some good in certain communities on a whole, not in certain communities, on a whole. And I
Okay.
think that we should continue to support that, in not the negativity, but the positive work that they do.
Okay.
But as an educator, yeah, I'm 110% for defunding. And
Okay.
I feel like the money could be used um, so many other places, hence education, because we tend to cut in all the other areas and never cut there. And I think that if all those police officers also felt that they were doing their job because they want to, and because they genuinely want to protect people and protect their community, then they would do it, just like any other, just like nurses, just like doctors, just like teachers. But making them extra comfortable in situations that are confrontational and where they positions of power where they feel like, I don't think we should do that. And I think, like people losing their jobs or not losing their jobs and still paying them and still getting pensions with all this stuff's going on, I don't think it's fair.
Okay. And I mean, you actually have a unique perspective being from probably the largest city amongst us. You are in New York City, which is one of the police departments that tends to get a lot of that flack. Like you hear a lot of the bad things that cops are doing as far as policing that happens in the
And
coastal New
yeah,
York.
and it's right out on the street. It's not like, they're not hiding it. It's right out on the street and people can take out their cameras and take pictures, and that's how we know about it. That's how we know about it. But I don't think you should do that and still get $130,000, $150,000 pension. I don't think that's fair.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Ken, I hear you clapping, so I'm gonna come to you. What are your thoughts?
Um, I had to learn the term defunding
Okay.
because I've heard the term before, and I've heard it in the realm of education, where they're taking funds from a particular department, and the funds, and they never really specified where the funds went. They just said, hey, we're cutting these funds to save on a particular budget. And I never have heard in any of those meetings where they go. So when I started looking into defunding in the police department in this regard, it is in which you'll take the funds from the police department and it's allocated somewhere else. I am for defunding with the people's voice saying, hey, this is where we want the money to go. If the people don't have a say in where that money is going, and the cities are deciding, hey, we're going to take this and we're just going to defund it, and they're not telling us where it's going, then I think that's very problematic. And I think with words like that, I think they put them out there, and like you said, like my brother said, it's election year, so they're using keywords and key things to get us like, oh, they're going to defund this, okay, and without people really knowing what it actually means. So
Okay.
if they're going to defund and let the people decide, I'm definitely with it. Disbanding, I'm with kind of in agreement with everyone else. I think the police department has a particular role, and in that role, I don't think it's the entirety of what the police is made for now, as opposed to what it was. But I do believe, like she says, the pensions that they're getting paid. We're talking about the protection in the judicial system. We want to see those changes. We want to see someone commit a murder on video, get arrested right away, like a regular citizen would. It's
Okay.
more so that versus the others,
Okay.
So
So would you say if they change the name, so maybe revise the police or something like that, as opposed to using defund, more people would be like interested in actually participating and having the defund process take place? Do you agree with that, Ryan?
Personally, I don't agree with disbanding, and I don't agree with defunding at the same time.
Okay.
Um,
Is there a reason why you don't think that they should defund the police or
uh, Personally, I really don't think that the police. I mean, if we're talking about dirty police, racist police, I just feel they don't either have their job. But if we're talking about the job of a actual good police officer that risk their life every day they go out, I really don't think it's no money that could replace that. Especially when you got a good police officer that die, um, like while they're actually doing their job. It's nothing. If I died, there's nothing you can give my fiance that could could do anything. You know what I mean? So I'm not up for defunding the police. I'm up for getting rid of the bad police. I mean, even if you defund the police and you keep the bad ones,
Okay.
that's even bad because how are they going to get their money now if they feel their salary isn't big enough? Like who are they going to steal that from and get away with it? How much
Okay.
more people they're going to mess up in the streets just because now they're not getting the money that they want. So I'm not for that. Now, if you want to take away their money and put it into things that's important in their job, I'm for that. But uh, no, I mean I got a lot of friends that's police officers and family members that's police officers, and no, I just don't. I
Oh,
know way too many good police officers, more than I met bad police officers. Just
okay.
saying.
All right. So let me. I guess I'll just throw this out there, or to challenge the thought process, or just to kind of get juices flowing with everybody. So you were talking about there are more good cops than bad cops, and you
That
don't
I've encountered.
that you've encountered. Okay.
Right.
So would you say that there is a big emphasis in America on, let's say, making sure that we have a strong military weaponization of our law enforcement, because in most places law enforcement takes up at least 50 or 60% of the budget, even if it didn't defund the police down to, let's say, 10%. But maybe if they took, instead of having officers have, because here in Baltimore we had some officers that made about $250,000 in overtime. So if, instead of having that, potentially maybe they could take some of the money, maybe 10% of that money, and shift it in education. Would you be okay with something like that?
Education as far as where,
School,
like
and putting it into the schools to make sure that there are more like after school programs for children, and maybe teachers getting a bit of a salary boost or something like that.
I just don't understand why we got to take it from police officers. That's the part I'm not understanding. Like, why them?
Because I guess the money, the most of the money every year annually goes to the police. So every year, so when you they build out a budget every year, and in certain places, I don't know if there's a justification for the amount of money that goes
So,
into the police.
so I guess honestly, what could be important to try to help bridge that understanding is how and why was this topic brought up in the first place on a national level, and what did the purpose intend to fix when it relates to police brutality by defunding? I guess is what um, my fellow brother that was asking the question is trying to get to the bottom to.
Right.
I think that like I said before, people not understanding what these words mean, they're put out there to say this is a solution. And so I think that the conversation of defunding and how that money goes, because, and rightfully so, I mean, not rightfully so, but it's true that we spend a lot of our budget on military, on defense, on policing, and we're cutting kids' education, we're cutting social emotional learning, we're cutting things that, again, a lot of young people are not getting in the homes, but yet we're spending money on defenses and money toward serve and protecting. And then what brings this conversation is because the people are having an issue with those who are serving and protecting, and they're getting all this money because people who are serving and protecting are murdering people, modern day lynching, and there is no sense of justice for the people to see that from a serviceman that they see. And so defunding is put up there as a solution. But I think that it kind of goes back to like I get what you're saying. He's asking like, how is that a solution? And it really is just a temporary band-aid. And it starts another conversation, another dialogue, another disconnect, because now the police might feel or will feel, I haven't spoken to an officer on this subject in particular, but many of the good police officers will feel, why am I getting punished? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? For somebody else, it's wrong. And I think the solution that we need to talk about is is changing those things that protect police when they murder someone or hurt someone or do any type of brutality. There are laws, there are things that are in place that protect them from justice. And so defunding and all these things, they're like band-aids. Yes, we do need to be moving the money over. That should be done before this situation even happened. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? That should be a forethought in our politicians' mind. But it's like this is like a little band-aid to give to the people to feel like there's a solution, if that makes sense.
Well,
Yeah.
I think defunding, just the word itself, is a buzzword and it's a comfort word, so people feel comforted by it. But I think we also need to look past just the salaries and the defense and looking at the fact that these officers, not the good ones, the bad ones, now have a union, now have a lot of money that then can also help defend them when they do commit a crime. And so they hide behind some of that, knowing that, you know what, I have such this strong power that be behind me, that no matter what I do, I have, lawyers standing by. I have a community standing by that's going to support me through this, and using that to their ability, because that's really what's happening.
So I have a question real quick. So, uh, gathering what everyone says, it sounds like we need to either both or either always defund the police because it serves beneficial purposes to other affiliations, and also still trying to get to the bottom of how defunding will solve police brutality. I don't feel like that is a direct, clear answer. I think that some people feel comfort from it, which I think you said, comfort from uh, hearing that it's happening. But like, how does that prevent the continuation of it? You know what I'm saying? Because it doesn't seem like that would be like, for example, like if I let's say at work I stole $5, and out of like $5,000, and then that pool went to $1,000, I could still steal $5.
True. I think it helps in a way. I think, again, I think Kent has a point. This is something that politicians should be looking at across the board, where money is going and where their priorities lie. Because when you see where the money goes, you know where the priorities are. When you have a bulk of money that tends to go in one area, that's where your priorities are. But I think that it helps in a way because now people will understand that what you do matters. So if I'm going to help the police department, if I'm going to reform the police department, now I'm looking at the different departments and areas in the police department, because there are certain areas and certain places that there's a bunch of money that goes there, but it's not really any justification for why. So they're getting 50-60% of the budget just to get 50-60% of the budget. If you're saying that we need to decrease the amount of interactions people have with police or policing, I think that that does impact the budget. So the more money you have, the more you're going to just push out overtime. You're going to have officers who are tired. You're going to have officers that are exhausted. You're going to have officers that should not be under the stress and strain that they're under. I get that we maybe need more officers or we need to change the way that the shifts are, but I think a lot of that also has to do with the amount of money they have. Because you know that I can stay on the clock for double, triple shifts, people do it.
Yeah, of course. I think that might be not more so tied to mischievous or misconduct, more so than tied directly to police brutality. Because I feel like even a person that does not do that, commit acts of violence towards blacks, can take advantage of being on the clock all the time, or take advantage of a bunch of unnecessary funding as well. So for me, like now that we're like kind of talking about it, I am for defunding, but not in this, as a solution for police brutality. Just as a wider conversation of where my money that I work very hard from goes to. That's like where I'm
Right.
always down for that.
I agree, and I think we all should definitely. It's just a piece. It's a small piece of
Yeah.
fixing police brutality. Another small piece of that is voting. So, what are the thoughts on the black vote? So we have two choices now. You have Joe Biden, and we're talking about of course, the presidential election. Of course, they're local level elections. Please vote locally; it matters. So we have Joe Biden and we have Donald Trump. And now there's a divide even amongst people of who to vote for. Should I just write someone in? Should I just stay home? Like, people are really concerned with the two choices that we have. I'm going to play two brief videos really quickly and then we're going to come back.
The National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets. Mayors and governors must establish an overwhelming law enforcement presence until the violence has been quelled. If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I...
So that's Mr. Trump, and then we're going to hear from Joe.
Police. No, I don't support defunding the police. I support conditioning federal aid to police based on whether or not they meet certain basic standards of decency and honorableness and, in fact, are able to demonstrate they can.
All right. So we have two totally different views of the police. One is very pro aggression, make sure you rough them up before you put them in the car. And then you have Joe, who now Donald Trump is going after because he's saying that he's weak on crime. And then we have to also remember that the things that Joe Biden did in the past, people are bringing up with the whole Anita Hill situation. Of course, he has a sexual allegation that's lingering. So does Donald Trump. What do black people do?
I'll go first. Honestly speaking, the black people voted for Joe Biden in the early primaries in those red states. So this is who we have now. I really think that whole system should be completely broken down, and I feel like all states should have an opportunity to vote in the primaries at the same exact time. So there's no kind of influence or win for one particular candidate over another, because I'm pretty sure the North thinks entirely different about Joe Biden than people in red states did. So that's my one thing. The second thing is, I think that black people should look at what Trump has done for black people in the last 4 years, which for me personally, in my experience, has shit on us. Like that is, excuse my language, we're not allowed to cuss on there, but I feel like Trump has, in every single chance and possible way, has been on the other side of the issues that are important to black people. I don't necessarily believe that Joe Biden is going to do much for us, but he's not preaching on the side of being against us as often as I feel like Donald Trump has been. And for me personally, before Donald Trump became the president of this country, back when Hillary Clinton was running, he made it very clear that he was very pro-police. He said that he felt like police needed to be respected more. He felt like the people in this country have been getting away with disrespecting them for quite a bit of time. He never mentioned anything about helping the black people that were being shot and murdered and killed or any of that stuff. He never, ever truly advocated for us, because it doesn't benefit him and who he's trying to cater to. And I also feel as though within this course of time, the only thing that people can say that he has done for black people is allocate government funds to black colleges. I mean, I would love to hear if he's done anything more. I remember him saying, "What do we have to lose?" And I really felt like we've lost a lot.
Okay, Karen, what are your thoughts on this?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. The first thing I think is that we need to vote. I know I was on social media and there's a couple of people on there that like, no, black people shouldn't vote. We should withhold our vote. I don't think so. I think that we need to use our voice. I mean, we still have the Electoral College, which is a whole nother thing and whatever. But because if my voice not going to be heard, I get it. People think if my voice not going to be heard, why am I going to go out there? But the reality is that if we don't come out and vote, if we don't have a voice, if we don't have a big enough following, then nothing changes. Everything stays the same. Right. And so I think it's important that people do go out and vote. I think it's important that they educate themselves. Me personally, I'm not a big Donald Trump fan. I feel like this man has managed to offend every single population of the American people intentionally. And I don't see, and I know that there was underlying racism in America. We all know that there was underlying racism in America, but I really do think since Donald Trump has been in the office, he really brought that underlying racism right to the top of where it could be and put it in everybody's face and basically, Who hasn't he offended? He's offended the Chinese people. He's offended the LGBTQ community. He's offended Black people. He called Haiti a shithole. Like, I don't understand. He don't want our vote. You don't want my vote. If that's what you don't want my vote. You just offended all of my friends, all of my kids, all of my coworkers. You don't want that vote. And so I also feel overall that we had some really strong candidates in the beginning, and we need to start looking at, and I know it's hard with everything that goes on in the systematic oppression, but we really need to start farming the people that we need to be in those positions. We need to start working on them from now. So 4 years from now, they can be ready, because we lost a lot of good candidates through the process because of funds, because of not having enough money. And they didn't have scandals, and they didn't have, they had maybe a parking ticket here or there. They didn't have these scandals, and these people that can afford to be in these positions are now what we're left with. You know
I
what
agree.
I mean? We lost a lot of good people along the way. So I feel like we should go out and vote, but I definitely think as a community, we need to come together and start putting our funds and our mouth into the people who we want to represent us and get them there.
Right. Let me answer that real quick. So I agree with you 100%. I promise I'm not even going to say anything. If we get another candidate like Joe Biden next time, I don't care if Hassan Hussein is the Republican candidate. I'm not voting. I'm not continuously supporting these type of candidates that get the nomination because of privilege and because of wealth.
That's what it is. But look how many people we lost out of the race that had to drop out, who are good candidates, who are strong people, who had a voice, who are making change, who've been on the ground, and who are actually human in the sense that, and I say human not to take it away from anyone else, but morally, like, what it is to not have a job, to not have money, to have to raise children. The people that lead us right now, we have somebody in office who's never lived like that. Who's never lived like that. So he doesn't understand that the $1,200 you sent don't help people in New York. Bread costs $1,200 over here. You know what I mean?
And that was a bipartisan bill. Bipartisan bill.
Yes.
Yeah, he doesn't understand that in order to send your kids to college, because we're at a financial deficit, I need to go take student loans. Can you write them off? He don't understand that. So we need people in office to sign that legislation and sign those laws, and who are.
We got a question for you, Karen.
Karen considers a strong candidate. I think Cory Booker was a strong candidate.
Okay.
I do. I think the lady in Virginia, what was her name? I think she's a strong candidate. I forgot her name at the top of my head. There are strong candidates. And for me, just to answer your question, it's not about, for me particularly, a strong candidate doesn't necessarily mean Democrat or Republican. A strong candidate to me is someone that comes out and knows what their agenda is. They're working for the people. They're addressing the people. They're pulling the nation together. They're making decisions that are in favor of everyone. That is a strong candidate to me. So even if we're talking about on the Republican ticket, to me, that's still not, you guys still don't have a strong candidate. They still don't have a strong candidate. As a Republican, even Giuliani or Chris Christie would have been a better Republican. To fight again. And I don't agree.
That's a rough one.
No, I don't agree with all their policies. I don't agree with all their policies. I don't agree with everything that's Republican. I'm talking about putting a candidate together, polishing them up, knowing what their agenda is. You don't have to agree with it, but you do have to stand there and know who you are, understand what you want, and try to have some order and organization and not offend everybody in the United States of America.
Got you. I'm gonna hold you off, Ryan, because you're the minority on this panel. So I'm gonna let you speak last. Kent, what are your thoughts on this?
Man, you guys already hit some good points. When it comes to voting, first of all, as Black people, descendants of Africans, I feel it's a duty, and I understand why people don't vote. I get it. I get it. I struggle with it. In the last election, I really struggled with voting, especially being my very first vote in 2008 was Obama. And so I believe the vote is important because the fact that it carries so much weight that we were beaten, killed, humiliated. There were so many different obstacles put in place to keep us from voting, that in a way to carry on our duty as not only Americans but also our forefathers who are fighting for the same thing we're doing right now, trying to decide on a candidate who's going to push the a agenda, not only for Black people, but at least an agenda that focuses on the needs of people of melanated skin. That's what the vote means for a citizen of our country. And so going in and making sure that we make a vote, I feel is important. I learned not to tell people they have to vote. I learned to tell them the reasons and the benefits of voting. You know, be able to do the jury duty, being able to be a person of a peer, because you never know what kind of case you may get on or whatever. So voting in itself is important, and we need to discuss that as a community on why it's important, not just because the ancestors did it, not just because we want to get Donald Trump out, but really discuss the value. And like she said, the Electoral College, that's a whole nother ball game. So
right.
we got to beat the system. The system changed over the time we got the right to vote. If we really look at it, because if you already know how it works, if this can beat out this state because based off of the number of electoral college points that they get. So with understanding that system, when it comes to who to vote for, we knew it was going to be a Democrat and Republican. They are the two biggest gangs. They are the two major wrestlers that we have to deal with every election. And I think as a people, like you said, we have to understand we need someone with an agenda that is willing to push the Black agenda. As a people, we do not have a Black agenda to attack this police terrorism that we're here talking about this evening. We do not have a package of discussing what laws are in place or what statutes are there to say, for instance, if the police is doing something. I have yet to hear a politician talk about if a police officer is abusing a privilege. As a citizen, I'm not saying I'm going to kill the man, but if I should have the right to push him off of someone if they're detained, they can't breathe. As a citizen, yes, who pays their dollars, I should be able to push him off of him to help this person live to see another day without the consequence of me getting shot in the face for it. No politician ever talks about that. So when we think about giving our vote to someone, are they really talking to us and what we're talking about and what we need? Or are they reiterating rhetoric for the last 20, 30, 40 years about education, about policies, about housing? We still got redlining issues in Chicago, you know, and I'm south of Chicago about an hour. So the energy of our candidate needs to be talking about our agenda and what is our agenda. And I think that's something that is in-house. That is not something that we have to groom our candidates for. And when they come knocking on our door, this is what you need to hear. When I vote, I'm voting in November. I'm not voting for either person. I'm not choosing the lesser two either. It's either ammonia or bleach. I'm not picking neither one. I'm gonna go ahead and get the Kool-Aid in the back.
Okay,
You know,
and now we
I have a question real quick for that, real quick. So what you're suggesting is you believe that people should just vote, but not necessarily. And what if they feel as though they don't have a candidate that they actually feel as though speaks to any of their important agendas or policies? You're saying, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want to make sure I get your question.
So you said that you weren't going to vote for the SRT rules at the end, but you also said that you should vote for a person that speaks to your political aspirations. What if what a lot of Black people say? What if there's no one? They're both crap. I mean, I feel like both of them are crap now, but I know that I need to make a decision.
Yeah.
You know. So what are you particularly saying to those people that say both candidates suck, neither one of them cares about Black people? What do you want me to do?
I would say local. I'm a vote.
But what about for the president? What about for the president?
But for the president, we have, even if you don't like the candidate, it's going to be either one of those people. That's the roll of the dice. Either way, it's going to be. So you're saying that they should vote for either or.
So you're saying there's not a better solution. There's not a better candidate, is what you're saying.
There's no better candidate when it's either going to be Biden or it's going to be Trump. So knowing that, if you can't vote for, if you feel like you cannot vote for a president honestly, then there's other places that need cleaning out. Okay. There's different people for the Senate. There's different people in the House of Republic. That's what we need to know, what's going on in our particular states, our wards, and our precincts. And those are the people that judges in our areas. Yeah, we got to heavily focus on that, right? Because I think people spend so much time in the presidential seat that we fail to look at the community issues. It's just like with Obama. Again, Obama had a lot of views that I did not agree with. Again, we're not going to agree with everybody. You're not going to get a candidate where you're going to get 100%. It's not going to happen. Right. But with that being said, people who want to get their voice heard, they get themselves in that seat for that agenda. He still had a House of Republicans where he had to go against people who went against what he was doing just because he brought it to the table. Look at the House. Look at everything that leads up to the president, and we decide what happens on the local and on our state level. Because again, like you said, if you can't joke, if I can't vote for either one of the president, then guess what? I'm gonna have to start working at the levels that I can affect change in.
And I'm gonna park and lot that because I want to speak to that in a minute. But Ryan hasn't spoken yet, so I want to talk to Ryan. Hi. What are your thoughts on the black vote? What should black people do right now?
To be completely honest, I think just that sentence alone is a problem. Because if we have to look at ourselves as different than any other American, that's just like the number one problem to me. So if we are looking for somebody to specifically speak towards us for being black, we're not focused on the main problem, which is why do we feel we are different than anybody else? Because I don't feel like I'm different than any white person, Chinese person, any of that. And I don't see Chinese people asking for white people to speak up for things that affect them in this country. I feel we have bigger issues at a state level. I feel a lot of black people issues that they have. They look for the president to fix things that they can't fix because they're just looking in the wrong direction. I feel like that's something that needs to be taught to people. Is just I've been in a lot of states. I've been in Florida and not Miami. I mean the boondocks. I'm in Pensacola. I'm 15 minutes away from Alabama. I lived in New York City for 10 years. I lived in Houston for a year. I went to Maryland. I can't really speak on that, but every place I went to was different. It was the way I was treated was different. Everything was different, no matter who the president was. So when we speak about the president, yes, I am a Trump supporter. As far as why I am, that's I'm gonna keep that to myself. I'm not a fan of pandering either. And I feel like it's so easy with black people, like with this sentence right here. I feel like it's so easy with black people for once you speak on these issues that people want to get spoken on, it's easier for black people to gravitate towards that. So if you do get a candidate that speak a lot for black issues, a lot of black people probably gonna vote for them, whether they go through with that or not. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem. So
I want to respond when you
okay.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I actually agree with your perspective. I think that's a great perspective to have about not feeling that you're any different and having that expectation of a person speak to you because of your skin color. The reason why people do say something about their black vote is because black people are in a different situation economically, in terms of education, in terms of poverty, in terms of how they're treated when they come across law enforcement, how they're treated when it comes to certain opportunities. Just look at just one simple thing, the presidency. It's only been one person that has been not white in the presidency out of the entirety that the presidency has been in place in this country. Whereas we can almost honestly expect that there'll be more white people to be there. But to see a woman, to see another person of color, to see an Asian person, to see a Latino person, those privilege lines are not the same. So when people say thoughts on the black vote, they say that because we are not in the same as white people. White people have a higher level of privilege and access across the board because this is how this country is right now. So that's why I feel like people kind of put more importance on their vote because they're like, you have, as a person that's probably white, that's going to the presidency, um, power to change that to where so I can have a chance to be the president as well. But I don't have the same chance as you being black. So if I vote for you, can you make that possible? That's why people try to put more weight on their vote. Now I know that you feel as though you may not feel any different than another person, but a lot of other black people do not feel like they have the same privileges and opportunities as others.
I
All right.
agree. And I think that when people see black, because we all know that we're all people. We understand that. We know that I'm a person, an Asian person. We're all the same. We just have a little bit different melanin in our skin that makes us
Right.
different. But unfortunately, live in a country that doesn't see it that way. They
Question.
see us as different.
Question. To go back to what he said. So you when you said we only have one black president, right?
Mhm.
Now we still have these same issues that we had. And
Before.
if you were to and if we were to rank Obama, and I'm not talking politics, but I'm just talking about as much of an influence as he was, as far as a role model he was to black people, that's he's up there. I'm gonna give him a 10 at that. I don't want to get into politics with Obama, but as far as what you see in a person, what you see in a family, his wife, his children, that's I really don't see any black person that could achieve close to what he was able to as far as just being just that role model. So if we have that, he's not in office. Even when he was in office, all this stuff was happening. But still, when you have that, how are we talking about why it matters on with our president? It don't matter if we have 10 presidents back to back to back to back. The issues we dealing with, we still dealing with them. Whether we got a black president, a white president, a president you feel racist, it doesn't matter.
Right.
These problems are in other places that we need to touch. As far as people not liking Trump for the things he's saying, I mean, they got a
Because
valid point because he do. I'm not going to sit here and say he don't say controversial things that will piss a lot of people off. He does. That's not why I'm a Trump supporter though. But if you have Obama, like I said, it's kind of hard to compete with that. As far
I
as
mean, I think we made. I will agree with you in
I
the
want to
sense
respond to that too as
that
well.
we made Obama a superhero.
Mhm.
We made him
Oh
the
yeah.
superhero. He is Wakanda.
Right.
We did that.
Yeah.
We
But I
didn't
will
expect to
also
see
say,
that.
yeah. But I will also say that you have to also look at the circumstances of when he was president. And I think the president does matter. You go in Walmart, right? And no one tells you you can't be here because you are colored. You are able to go outside and do what you want. That depended on the president because who they were running against did not want to see that happen. The president of the United States matters. In as far as with the Supreme Court, there's things that have passed through the Supreme Court that would not have been able to do so depending on the president and
Right.
who they appointed. These are lifetime appointments. They do not leave. It
That's true.
matters.
Let me start real quick when you get a chance.
Yeah,
Uh,
it matters. But go ahead. Go ahead, Alec.
so real quick, I know you're trying to get through the topics. So Obama did things for LGBT. Obama did things for DACA, and a few others. So he put policies in place in order to be able to help people. Trump went in office. He did everything he could to undo those things. So he took away transgenders' privileges in the military. He also took away DACA from people that were in this country. So the president does matter, and those things that I'm just like talking like generally. Those documents he took away, those made those people's lives worse. When Obama was in office, he put those policies in place to make those people's lives better. So that I'll say to go off of her, it does matter. The second thing I want to say is in response, um, Obama was exemplary. Like, well, I'm sure I said the word right. I probably can't because pronunciation, but he had all the things you said were things that a lot of people want to live up to. If he was any less than that, conservative white America would drag the crap out of him for it.
They
So
did.
they
They
did.
did.
Like if
They
he,
did. They made it hard. It wasn't easy.
if his hand was a little too low below his wife's waist, dragged. But when Donald Trump comes in with sex scandals, vulgarity, lies, trashing people on Twitter and stuff, the same America lets it go. So that is a part of being privileged. That's what part of not of the difference. I mean, Joe Biden, the same thing. One of the most lackluster, lack-inspiring, do-nothing candidates, privileged, expects the black vote without doing anything. People, he can get away with that because he is privileged. And that is where black people are like, if I vote for you, and I'm not saying that you by yourself can change that, but I want to believe that if you're asking and earning my vote, that these are things that are important to me, and I want you to be on my side with that issue.
I think we also need to look at the fact that there's a whole marketing thing around the black vote.
Yes.
There is.
You know what I mean? There is a whole campaign for these candidates around the black vote. And we need, as black people who are going to vote, whether you choose either candidate or none of them, you're going to write something in. We also need to understand that because they're playing into a particular market and creating this ideal, like I'm gonna come in. It's like selling a kid a Happy Meal at McDonald's, right? Like I got a toy here, I'm gonna hold it in your face, I'm gonna tell you what it is, and then this is what I'm gonna do for you because I need that vote. And so we need to be educated on who the people are we're voting for.
I agree
what
with that.
their agendas are, what their party is, whether we support it or not support it, or how we come to that, because we can't just say a lot of people did vote for Obama because he was
black.
He was the first black president, right?
Yeah.
And I understand that to some extent, but were we doing the work that we needed to do? Right. And that was great. He came with Obamacare. He came with other things to try to help communities. But did anybody do their homework is the question.
Yeah. He was always a centrist. Even when he was in Illinois, he was always a centrist.
So we do our homework. And so now in this situation, we need to do our homework and say, okay, don't just say the black vote, and wave a flag and say, this is what I'm going to do. But is this a candidate that you feel strong enough about that's going to help support what needs to happen in America right now? And right now we have a big race relations problem.
Agreed. And Ryan, you have a question. So Dave wants to know do you believe that the change comes within and that it comes from people and starts from the family and grows locally?
Most definitely. That's literally what I'm saying. I feel like, and I think we're gonna get to this a little bit later, so I don't want to jump ahead. But yes, I feel like us as black people have more we have a responsibility to our own people that we don't seem to take, as far as improving ourselves, our youth, things that we shouldn't let slide, things that we may see and turn and go the other way. Because we already know what it's going to be like once we try to teach. They're not going to listen. We're too
He's
old.
going to vote for you, by the way.
Thank you. But to me, that's the biggest problem. Listen, this Trump thing, this Biden, all of this, it's every 4 years, man. But when it comes to our race, it's been black people for way more than this. We have children, you know what I mean? And it's like, a presidency can last a max of 8 years. I want my kids to last for over 80. So we need to do things for them instead of focusing on the wrong things.
Right.
That's how I feel.
So let me ask real quick, and I want you to respond to this. So what do you feel as though we can give our kids a value that we're not giving them, and do you feel as though other people are giving them, or other races? Because you said we as black people we need to look at our kids, we need to do X and X. So what are examples of things that you feel as though we can do to empower our youth and make our own better?
Hold higher people responsible. And by that I mean people, for instance, Obama was a role model because he made it to be the president. We have basketball players. We have so many people that make it to this high level of success that we need to hold responsible for also giving a better message to the youth instead of causing these bad having these bad traits are profiting off of these bad traits that they may not even live once they cut the camera off or walk away from the microphone. I will say,
rappers and stuff like that. Is that what you're talking about? Entertainers?
Yeah, entertainers, because it's like this. I'm gonna say it like that. I want to say this one thing. We as black people, we were slaves, right? When Donald Trump had this one interview, he said, I was given a small loan of $1 million. That's crazy. Who you know that's going to give you $1 million? That's not normal. But let's take it from $1 million. You have, since we were slaves, we weren't able to be successful for as long as white people have been able to. We're they may be up here with, and we're like right here because we're trying to get there. But one thing that we do is when we get money, instead of investing things so we can have money to pass down to our children, we spend it on things that have no value in a couple of years to be able to give our children nothing. It's for them to have to keep repeating this cycle of where we are just trying to get up here, where they kind of like we can't fight about that. It is what it is. We were slaves. All right, cool. But at this point, we got to start living for the youth. We have to start doing things to put the next generation into a better position so they could keep doing it and doing it and doing it as well.
Is
Right.
that the biggest
So,
existential threat you feel the black community
Most
faces?
definitely. Yes, because if otherwise we're just going to keep repeating ourselves over and over again. We will still be here in 30 years having the same conversation over and over again.
So I don't want to start real quick. So
and then I'm gonna jump in after you.
you said two things. I'll be really, really quick. So you said two things. You said we shouldn't worry about other people, but then you said we should worry about them and hold them to accountability. And then your second response behind that was that we need to do more economic responsible, like be more economic responsible. And go ahead. And then
No, I just want to what you said at first. I said we shouldn't worry about
worry about them.
No, not them. 'Cause we need to worry about our people.
Mhm.
I'm saying we don't need to worry about the people ahead of us as far as like the people that had the luxury or the privilege, as you want to call it, that didn't have to deal with slavery.
I just want to make it's
That's what I'm
8:30.
saying.
Is it okay that we go? Do you want to go to 9? If you gotta, can you have time?
Yeah, I can go to 9. I just got a message of people about something, but yeah.
That's all I wanted to say. Go ahead.
So got you. So, but then you said more economic responsibility. That's not an issue that's black exclusive. I feel like that can be done by anybody, like white, Asian, anything. So I feel like that's not necessarily like to me something that would help black people as a whole. I think the reason why people look to other people of privilege is because they have those opportunities. And when you qualify to get those opportunities, in fairness, they would expect to get them, but they don't have the knowledge or the access. And I feel like if they are able to do that, they're able to give that knowledge and access to other black people. But until then, what we have right now, I feel like it's not enough just in the black community by itself.
Kent?
I think the beautiful part about having Trump in office, and I did not vote for Trump or Hillary in 2016. I felt Trump was going to win with Obama having been in office, and just the energy of seeing a black man in the highest seat in the country just made people feel some type of way. And like we talked about, we as black people had we felt like it was the victory of all victories, similar to the civil rights movement. Once we got to the bus, we got integration, we were able to get into schools. We took that victory and we got relaxed with it. Because as we're talking about slavery and how we got here and the threats that have happened over the generations, we have to understand that those threats evolved with us over time. The media, the image of what we look like, being violent, being hypersexual active, men missing from the home. These things have been taught to us via history in school, in the schools we go to, and they tell us how this thing molded. And so what happened is that we now see what has been underneath people's energy this whole time. It's like going from the South to the North. That racism was hidden. It was different in the North. So we felt like everything was okay. And then when Trump got to office, the people that we dealt with every single day locally, they begin to show their underlying feelings when it comes to black people. And so with that energy, we can address that particular threat that we already know has existed. Now, again, I'm not saying all white people are bad. It's not because my life and my story. I've been blessed to have so many different people from many walks of life help me develop into the man that I am today. But the reality of my particular story as a black man, a crack baby, literally 1986, looking at and talking to my mother when I met her and seeing the issues they dealt with in the 80s and putting that history together, we as a people, like Ryan is saying, and I love how you're saying it, Ryan, because there are a lot of people who are Trump supporters who are melanated, that they treat black people as if we're just dumb. You know what I'm saying? Like we're just saying the issues we face with, we don't care about it. We're only focused about white people. But what I love the way that you said, what you said is that at some point you have to stop trying to get someone else to see the beauty in you, and you have to believe the beauty in yourself, come together, build together. And it's going to be treated like separation. We look at it in history's point of view. Rosewood, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Anytime black people came together and did it together alone without the influence of the white supremacy system, because that's what we're dismantling. Ages of systems directed to keep people, like you said, some people here and keeping people here. And so that comes with us having to have these in-depth conversations, which we like to call in-house conversations, where we need to talk about that behind closed doors, because I've watched other cultures do that. In public, they got a system. They support each other. But when they go behind closed doors, best believe if you messed up, you getting chastised. You're getting cussed out. Anytime we come together, you got to bring a dollar. You got to bring a dish. And we have to remember that a movement is ever going. Once something is in motion, it never stops. And so the civil rights movement was just the energy of our ancestors who wanted to get out of the chains to get back home, to deciding, since we built this sucker here, I almost cussed. Since we built this mug here, we might as well insert ourselves in every aspect.
You can curse if you would like.
We got to come together. We got to come together. Because I know when you saw my post, I said I'm writing in Killer Mike for president. When I saw his statement telling people to go home, he did not want to be there. But in the conversation of doing things a particular way, we got to get uncomfortable and put ourselves in spaces and address the issue. Like Ryan is saying, we can't keep waiting for somebody to do it. And we thought Obama was going to be the savior. We have to bring that energy to ourselves, but also remember, this fight is age long. It goes back to when people were praying and still getting murdered. You know what I'm saying? So this is something we have to remember. And while I identify the world as my home, my story here on the soil of America, we can't afford to forget the history. We can't afford to believe that it's okay. Because when somebody is murdered in cold blood, going back to why we're here, detained, handcuffed behind his back with a knee into his neck for almost 9 minutes, that is a lynching. When that person is not arrested, until people get out to the streets and start protesting, when you have people who have dealt with it enough and they start destroying stuff, the social and emotional energy in our community, and I'm a product of that, comes from what you have at home. And systematically, the crack epidemic, the guns that show up in our community, the drugs that show up in our community, this is not just by happenstance. So again, we got to take the energy back home and decide, you know what? I'm tired of begging you to give me what I want. And I'm going to have to take myself behind closed doors with my people and have this dialogue and come out equipped to build another Wall Street, but be built to be able to take the terrorism that comes whenever Black people decide to pull ourselves up.
So would you say what is the biggest existential threat then to the Black community? Are you saying that it's the lack of being able to come together in a united way to strategize, to figure out what is it that we actually need to do?
I would say, honestly, it's true healing from the energy of the PTSD that has affected our culture up until now. When have we ever sat down and healed appropriately? Any group of people that have been offended on this soil was giving some type of, and even that compensation still wasn't enough to the destruction that was done to them. You know, but at the same time, to heal, and again, I don't know everyone's story, but for me to be able to have the dialogue and to engage people in my skin and hear, say for instance, Ryan's point of view, where I know other Trump supporters who look like him just come in with such vicious venom. My healing process, me being able to understand that we heal in different ways. Black people have not healed. When has it ever happened? We got civil rights in the 60s. They killed all of our leaders. The crack epidemic hit. Factories got shut down. Reaganomics happened. 80s babies where you got hardly no jobs, heavy police, then the war on drugs. Like, when have we ever healed? When
Agreed.
have we ever had a chance to actually heal? So the healing process and being able to socially and emotionally evolve into this century, because that's why we're protesting and rioting. And again, I don't tell people how to move. I
Okay.
don't care to protest. I go out there to support the young energy who have called me out there to be there, because now I'm in that age where I am that older guy now. But at the same time, we're still doing things of the past because we haven't been taught how to adjust to the things of the new, which is knowing the LGBT, they knew everything they needed to get done. And they saw Obama with the opportunity and they went in like a missile and got it done on that particular stage.
Okay,
And
so I do want to address that. So one thing that from Black people in the Black community, and one of the biggest things that I feel like we do is use other communities as an example of how we can advance. So people talk about the Jewish community a lot. People talk about the LGBT community a lot. Those two communities were in different circumstances that I feel like the Black community. So I feel like using other communities may not necessarily work for us. For example, with the LGBT community, white people are involved in the LGBT community. So there's a higher level of priority there already to be able to get the type of civil rights that they were seeking, which the main thing that they needed was gay rights, which a lot of people still in our own community don't agree with. The second thing with the Jewish community, they also have different levels of opportunity and access than the Black community does too. But I know that is a conversation that I consistently hear from the pro-Black speakers, saying that isolation and Black focus and Black togetherness and unification will be the key to success. And I always have been in a disagreement of that. One, I don't know what we have within our own community that can get us to those places that a Jewish community has, because I don't really feel like we have anything of significant value comparative to those communities. And secondly, I feel like there is so much divide in our own community by itself that I feel like there's no way that we can literally be on the same page and get anywhere.
I agree.
So what's your
I was just about to say that.
So
we
have
everything.
So what do you guys feel?
We control the culture in America. They want to be us. So they want to be us. So we bring those resources together. That's where that healing comes in.
So,
where, I don't have to agree with you, but let's bring our money together because when stuff like this happens, that's when we come together. That's when the actors come in, the athletes. When you look at us now, you can feel the pulse because we reach points where we're tired. It's almost like when the family comes together at a funeral, we got to come together before the funeral happens to say this is what we need to do.
But it's not just Black voices. There's voices from every community, and there are other voices from communities that take benefit in becoming a part of this movement. I feel like it was just Black people saying we're tired of people shooting us. Like, this is not the first year this happened. It's been happening all up until now and all before 2016 and everything like that. It's just not enough because we don't have any kind of legislative access abroad. So I still need to hear, when it's just everybody else gone, what can Black people achieve outside of culture that can have that type of value as other communities do? And I'm talking about LGBT community. I'm talking about.
I think Black people have the numbers more than any other group that can come together and pull something out, right? But the thing is, there's number of layers here. There's the social, there's the emotional, there's the weight that we're carrying from ancestry, and then there's moving into these new eras. But I think most importantly, when you ask what's the biggest threat, sometimes we are a threat to ourselves, right? We need to look at education. Number one, we need education. And I don't mean, I'm an educator, but I don't mean just necessarily sitting in the classroom, but understanding who you are and where your place is first so that you can understand where your next step forward is, right? So we have to deal with that. We also have to deal with, like Ryan said, we can't always expect someone to come and save us, right? We don't have a leader. We're gonna have to lead ourselves. So what is it, even in this movement right now that we're having with the police officers, what do you want? Because we're marching and we're praying and we're protesting and we're burning shit down, but what do you want? Right?
Right.
What is the
I agree.
clear, defined things that you want? Because we can't negotiate if I don't know what you want.
Right, exactly.
Right? So really, what we need to do is pull together and have a unified voice and be strategic. And then to go back what Ryan said too, we also need to understand where we're spending our dollar, because we do spend more than anybody else.
We do.
They purposely put money into certain communities because they know we go and spend it 6 hours. 6 hours. That's what the numbers say. In the African American community, if they give money, we're spending it in 6 hours. In other communities, it can circulate up to 60 days.
Right.
So what we need to do is be smart about how we're spending our money and use our leverage.
Right. So I'm going to touch on a couple things. So I 100% agree on education. However, everyone does not have the same kind of priority when it comes to education that others have. So getting on the same page with that by itself and what education looks like for everybody would be a feat, in my opinion. I also feel as though everyone does not agree with solutions to what we want in terms of all this writing and stuff. Some people think that it's F everybody else, let's come together. Some people think that it's rioting, looting. Some people think it's legislation. Some people think it's getting rid of the police. Some people, it's so many different things. And it just seems like a lot of times and I've talked to so many different people, when you have an idea that's different from yours, that your idea is not something that they're considering whatsoever, and that their idea is the only way to be. So, for example, when I feel like people criticize the things that we do in our own community or holding our own selves accountable in ways not necessarily talking about how we spend money, but talking about violence or crimes and robbing and stealing, the things that happen a lot in our communities at a large number. It's not exclusive to our communities, but it happens in our communities. People don't want to talk about those things. They want to focus on what other people have done, or the aspect of just isolating and hoping that is just not a problem.
So, but if we don't reflect on ourselves, then we can't change. That is the reality of it. And you can't move forward if you don't know exactly where you're going and who you are. And I understand what you're saying. Some people's mentality is just like, I'll rather blame somebody else, but then we don't make any progress. And then here we are, like he said, for 30 years doing the same thing in a circle because we're not making any progress because we can't come together and organize what we want in a way that benefits all of us.
I agree.
We grab these young people who are tired, who are protesting, who are marching. For those of us who are, and I believe 30 and 35 and up, we have a responsibility to grab that energy of being tired, and they're learning, they want to do something to teach them about legislation, teach them what they can do and how they can do it, because that's on us. Because if it took me years to learn it, because my mother didn't know how. I was adopted, and she had an 8th grade education, so she couldn't teach me. So it wasn't until I got around educated Black people who had that pride in being Black, unapologetically, to say, if you address it this way, this is how we can come together. When we meet, we're going to bring $1 every time, and setting the status quo. This is going to be the new normal status quo, so people don't point at us, but because we need to find that definitive voice for our particular selves. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
So
I mean, I agree.
We gotta make the decision.
But here's the thing. So should we start a national organization to represent Black people, or the betterment, where we are on one accord? Now, I understand like what Ryan is saying, that one of the biggest issues is kind of taking yourself and moving you away from the other groups. So now, instead of it being for everyone, it's particular to Black people. But I think that we do need something that does focus on Black people, because we are 13% of the population, and a lot of the laws and things tend to affect us more negatively than other groups. So what bringing in what Karen said, bringing in what Kent said, bringing in what Alex said. What you're saying is we need an organization to come together, sort of like an organization you would have like an NRA, but for the betterment of Black people. Do you think something like this could work outside of the NAACP? Something new?
So I think that it would have to honestly be widespread knowledge, and it would need to consistently promote itself and the opportunities and access that it wishes to give to Black communities consistently. Because I feel like a lot of people are donating to so many different Black organizations, but we don't know what those I don't personally know what those organizations have done for me personally as a Black person, or what they even offer. So I think that that will probably be the most important thing, is clarity and a certain powerful method of exposure in terms of what it actually is doing for Black people, so people know how to utilize it. But I think it could work if in that regard.
Um, I I think that with what I said, I probably worded it wrong. When I said that I want to focus on us, I didn't mean it by separating ourselves from the world. Like at the end of the day, I don't feel like we need to separate ourselves from white people or any of that. What I'm saying is, and to answer this question, I'm gonna say no, because I don't need anybody to speak for me. I feel like when you have educated Black people, I just feel like we need to educate our race. That's all I'm saying. I just think that we need to hold our race responsible for certain things
How do
and
you
all.
educate your
But that's what
race?
I'm saying. That's how's that process? That's
You said how do we educate
How
our
do you?
race?
Yes.
yes.
The same way that your parents educate you when you grow up, as far as things that's right and things that's wrong. We see things that's wrong all the time and we just walk the other way. I don't think that we should do that, because it's easier to walk away. It's easier to see something wrong and not go at it. But like, even like just being in the church, or just like, it's we had this when we grew up. I don't know, it's things been changing, but we had a lot. Well, at least I did. I had people that wouldn't let me do certain things. Don't go outside with your pants sagging, this, that, and the third. Like, I could probably get a whooping from a neighbor, and it'll be all right. You can't whoop nobody could whoop their neighbor's children in
Not
2020.
today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it's just community wise, as far
So
as just holding.
each other accountable, because that's
right.
really what it
Exactly.
was. I remember that. I remember being outside and the people in the neighborhood saying, it's time for you to go upstairs. I'm going to walk you home. Otherwise, I'm going to tell your dad because you need to be home. But we don't live in that same generational way anymore. And so there's a lot of kids out here who don't have that guidance at
Right.
home, who are, I'm going to answer Dave, who are in the poorest areas, in underfunded schools, who don't have guidance from parents, or whose parents are working. I have students whose parents are working from 4 o'clock in the morning till 12 o'clock at night. So the students are left, alone. So they're not getting that guidance, which kind of ends up getting them into the trouble. They're not getting that support system. And that's part of, goes
Yeah.
back into the socioeconomic issues that families face, why they lack education, even from home. Because that also then, especially for brown and Black males, ends up putting them in special education and then into a pipeline to prison.
So
Right.
Facts.
I need to ask
Facts.
Ryan, and Ryan a particular question, then I need to add another thing.
Mhm.
So when you suggested that we need to keep our race accountable and educate our race and stuff like that. There have two things. Everyone's level understanding of parenting is different. So people are going to parent their child to hate gay people. People are going to parent their child to hate white people. People are going to parent child. Well, I don't care what you do. Go out there and sell drugs and split it open, whatever. Do whatever you want to do. Everyone's philosophy of how to raise their children will be their own. And I feel like there's no way that that can be unified whatsoever, because everyone's going to do what they want with their own children. My second thing is, why would not having an organization that can at least give information, or can be a database for information for Black people, not be a sufficient way for people to get economic advice or know where to get economic opportunities, so that way they are possibly using themselves and getting the information and knowledge that's given to them. Because I feel like that's probably the biggest reason that's holding us back, and applying themselves, but they know where they can go grab that information from if there's a work out there that they know about. So why is that not like something that people can rely upon, or why is that not a solution that you agree with?
The reason, not necessarily that I don't agree with it, but it's well, I feel we have a lot of that already. We have a lot of nonprofit organizations
I don't know
that,
what they do personally.
what
I don't
nonprofit
know. No,
organizations?
I know what they do, but I don't know I don't know what each nonprofit organization
Cool.
does.
Let me give you an example. So, I left New York when I was around 21. I got multiple felonies, and it became extremely hard for me to get jobs here in Florida because it was so fresh. I moved to New York City, and it was a nonprofit called Brooklyn Works Innovations, and they took people that was, that had charges, or people that was underemployed, and they gave them free classes. So I got into the information technology field. I'm a low voltage technician. A lot of the people that went through this, and it was a process where you had to be accepted, were mostly minority, and not just black, but I mean like Latino, all of that. We have things like that, but if we solely depend on that to not even just raise our kids, because you made a good point when you said people raise their children different, but we need to hold those parents responsible as well. Just because they're not a child don't mean we don't need to hold them responsible.
So then,
When the riots first started, I'll be honest, I was a victim of this. Just because I like to hold people responsible, I lashed out on a lot of black people that was doing it. But the thing about it is, it was just the media that was showing a lot of black people that was doing it, and nobody else. And once that message came through, and Trump went out and said these thugs, black people, they stopped letting white people even do it. You stop seeing black people rioting, and these aren't children. They're stopping grown people from breaking businesses, black owned businesses, all of that. So you don't have to be a child for me to hold you responsible. You know what I mean? Like, it's possible. So all I'm saying is, with this, we have a lot of nonprofit organizations, and you can donate to them.
but I
You
don't. I
Yeah,
don't. I
right,
don't.
you can donate to that. You can do whatever you want with your money.
Right, but
But
right. But
but
I think nonprofits, and I agree with you, nonprofits are not necessarily the solution. They shouldn't be the solution by itself.
right.
As a person who has run and founded a nonprofit, works in the nonprofit industry, I also understand how nonprofits work. A lot of nonprofits don't understand how to operate. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to do it. A lot of the grassroots organizations get pushed out. None of the money goes to the people that actually have the boots on the ground. It goes to the big organizations. So then it's just this corrupt system.
right, that's what I was trying to. That's what
And
I was trying to allude to. It's like,
and yeah, so it can be a very corrupt system, but it's necessary. That's why I think having an organization where those nonprofit organizations can get that training, and you have people who need at the education as far as like a catch-all. Now I know what organization to go to that can point me to XYZ. And this is an organization that will go and lobby, because the NAACP is not necessarily doing that. But somebody that can go and lobby for these rights, or the laws and legislation that will impact black people on a positive way. I think that's why having something like that would be beneficial. But something that's come up, and I want to get your opinions on it before we go. I guess two more things before we go. Reparations. It has come back to the forefront. What are your thoughts on this? Do you
um,
think it's a good idea? Bob Johnson of BET has proposed $42 trillion reparations package for black people.
I feel like when it comes to reparations for black people, um, there really is not a price tag for this. And not I'm not saying that if America decided to give us something that it depending on how it goes back to that organization. If we have representatives as a voice saying this is what we would like from the United States of America to settle the trauma, because we, and again, for those, most people don't understand that or care to understand that, but trauma runs, again, as we're talking about education, as we're talking about housing, as we're talking about communities, as we're talking about families, trauma and the lineage of different things that has happened to Black people. A lot of things are happening based on how we are as individuals. But if you look at the systems in place, there has created these snowballs and pockets of communal breakdown. Beginning again, look at the timeline. So when we talk about reparations, you have to look at the lineage of pain and trauma that was given, and that price tag. It's deeper than a number, a price tag. It has to talk about land. It has to talk about actual monies that to give to people to actually delegate and put those things into play. Which, as a people, we have to be. That's an in-house conversation that we will have to be honest about and say, which we've talked about today. We're not prepared for. You know what I'm saying? To delegate where this money goes and how this money is used. But if we're talking reparations, we need to be at that table and say, this is what we want, not them write a check and say, oh, we're going to give you this because this amount of money should be able to fix things right up. We're still talking about emotional and social trauma. 80s babies are now the parents of the kids now that we're talking about. 80 babies, a lot of us didn't have parents to teach us. We went through foster care. We went through many different pockets and things to teach us how to develop as a human being. So we really can't expect a family structure to grow with two people who don't know what a family structure is. Me and my wife come from, I'm adopted. She comes from a single parent home with no male influence at all. So for us to come together to raise a family, we're doing it with no experience, no sight at all. So when we're talking about reparations, that's where we have to come together. And it may be the unpopular conversation on here, but that's where you have to separate from white people, from white America, because they're always in the mix of what we do in our decision making, that we can't tell them, hey, this is what we want. I can't tell you what Kent wants unless Kent knows Kent. And then Kent is able to tell you, this is how Kent receives love. This is how Kent receives gratitude. And that displays my relationship. So in reparation, we got to talk about what is it that we want. And it has to be more than money, because we just said it. We spend more money than anybody else. So we might need land. We might need those resources. We might need an oil field. We might need, those are conversations that we need to sit down and actually discuss.
Is this pandering? Do you think this is another, because we've seen the pandering with Nancy Pelosi and the kente cloth, and we've seen a lot of pandering recently.
I think it is. If you're not bringing us to the table to ask us what we want, if you say, hey, here's the number, this is what we're going to give you, you bring us to the table and let us speak for ourselves. You know what I'm saying? That's how you reach us. Ask us what we want and we'll tell you what we want, and then you give us even with the topic now, we want to see justice for a murder. That's what people were right. Some people, we got to be honest, some people were out there just to burn stuff down, but people were angry because a public servant murdered a man in broad daylight and was able to go and leave work with pay. We want justice. We don't want to talk about race relationships. We want to see justice from a servant that we pay out of our tax dollars. We want to see the same justice as that we get that happens when we get in trouble for certain situations and we automatically get the book slammed in our face. That's what we want to see. All this other stuff is just fluff. We got to get to what we really want to see, or people are going to keep pandering and saying, what about this? What about this? Reparations is a great topic. Let's talk about this any other day, but let's get this justice.
Asians did get, just to answer this, they did get reparation. Yeah, they did.
How did they receive it?
So they got the money back. So a lot of them lost businesses and stuff like that, and they gave them the money of whatever they lost was worth after they left those internment camps. Yeah. So they did get something, but I think it's harder for African Americans because they waited so long. So now you have to determine who gets what.
For me, when I think about reparations, I'm like, what's this going to fix? What is it going to fix?
Right.
Because if I'm still going to be followed around in the store, if I'm going to have to take my money and live only in a certain neighborhood, if I still can't get a certain job, if the laws that were written in 1776 when they were still slaves and I still have to follow the Bill of Rights and the Constitution that wasn't written for me, what are those reparations going to do for me? You're paying me off.
Right. Agreed. I think this
You're
is a
paying me off
level
to
of
continue to go along with this. For lack of, I got a bad word I'm about to say. You're paying me off. I mean, I was at the African American Museum this summer. I took my son down there, and I read a document that said that every black man was considered 1/3 of a person, 1/3 of a human. Those are the laws that we are still living by today. You have to honor the Bill of Rights. You have to follow the Constitution. That's what we're still living by. So instead of reparations, I'm not saying I don't mind the money, but maybe we need to do the work where the work should be. Because you're telling me that I need to stand, and I get it. You're an American, but then when you wrote it, you didn't write it for this American.
right.
Right.
I agree with
But
that.
you want me to still adhere to it and honor it and respect it. So you giving me reparations doesn't change any of that. With free college.
I think I think that's a good idea. I think a good idea is not going to fix everything, but I think it's a good idea for African Americans to be able to have that, because that's another reason why we are economically behind a lot of people, because the student loan crisis hit us at astronomical rates because we
Oh, I
didn't have
know.
any money to put our kids
know.
through college.
I know, I'm still there.
Yeah, so I agree with that. Now, kind of switching gears a little bit, how do we move forward from here? What do we do now that all the officers have been arrested? We are having the protests are starting to die down. What do we do in order to move forward from this point and not lose the momentum? Because the protesting long term is not sustainable. We can't do that every day.
So I think it's important to not allow election years to be the years that we put a lot of power behind wanting change. I think we should continue to vote. The reason why I feel as though that is probably the most direct thing we can do is
Okay.
because we're dealing with an institution that we did not create ourselves, and that is not a part of our everyday. So dealing with police, that is a system that government put in place. So I feel as though because of that reason, we need to make sure that there's legislation that keeps their system in check to treat us more fairly. Just relying on ourselves is not going to be strong enough to do anything, because it's not something that we created and it's not something that we have any control over. So I feel like legislation would be that direct aspect. I mean, that direct pathway. And I feel like we should consistently champion that we want law enforcement to be held to the same degree and standards when they do the same amount of heinous crimes that a non-officer person does, to be held to the same standard, and the legislation should directly mention them. So that way, and also I feel as though maybe giving citizens more power in situations when dealing with officers. Like there should never be situations where you're not allowed to record an officer's misconduct, and that you should be able to have more information on what rights you have and what you can refuse and what you can't refuse. So for me personally, just to wrap it all up, legislation and pushing for mentioning directly of police accountability, so that way there's no questions asked. It says in the law. It's not you go through this long process, bring them both to court, and then wham bam, one person can't even speak for what happened, and then the officer gets to go home back to their family and oftentimes get their job back.
Okay, Kent, what can we do to move forward? What do we need to do as an African American community and American community to move forward?
This is year 2020, which has been a very difficult year for everyone. To even have this conversation during a pandemic, where all livelihoods should be together like never before. There's a lot of we need to do some looking within, and I believe Alex said, the legislation, we need to attack every avenue possible, but we need to get together and see what areas do we have. We have senators, we have people that are who say they stand with us. Okay, if you stand with us, this is what we want to see. We have to come together and come up with an agenda for these politicians, for these legislations, understanding what's out there. Like you said, my sister said she went to the museum. I went to the Smithsonian African American History Museum in DC 2 years ago, and just taking that is going from the basement all the way up to current times. It takes you to where they began taking slaves in Africa and moving all the way up. We have to look at those things in our Constitution that still have been left over from the years before, and really begin to love ourselves and show the world that guess what, you're not no longer going to abuse us. Look at those rights, like he says. If a police officer is abusing their privilege, if we can't report them, if another officer who's there who wants to, they're afraid to share that information because of retaliation. There needs to be laws that protect those officers that know of bad officers. We need to know what we can and what we can't do, because right now we are literally at a point where we can't tell on the police. We can video play. They can have body cams. We can record them. Nothing happens. We can't touch them. We can't kill them. We can't fight them or kill them back. So what is it that we can do to protect ourselves from from actual? This is terrorism. This is modern day lynching. We have to call these things what it is, because this is a public servant who is excessive force, who is killing people, who are killing people. And again, look at that person, look at that case, and demand the justice for that particular issue. And we have to change everything that is from the law, from how we address it as a community. We cannot be torn apart, yelling at each other in broad daylight. It makes us look dysfunctional. And then the people who are against that come and they attack that. And now we're arguing about something else when the issue at hand we're not addressing, which is police terrorism, police brutality. So we gotta start having these in-house conversations, and politicians that come to knock on your door. This is what I want to see. If you're not talking about this, I don't care about it. I don't care if you say, well, don't you want to get Trump out? That's not good enough, because regardless of who's in office, we got to have a voice somewhere, and we need to decide that now.
Okay, Karen.
Where do we go from here? I think there's a lot of things that we need to do from here. Like, this conversation, I think, was very rich, and there's a lot that you can take away from it. I think everybody had really good points. I think we need to work on ourselves as parents. I think I would start there, and what we're teaching our children at home. That sense of community, try to build it within our lives the best we can. And I know not everybody has all the resources, but just being grounded and responsible with your children and teaching them. I think education is important, and not necessarily in schools or anywhere else, but just being able to share information and bringing awareness to what's going on. I think what we need from here is we definitely need legislation, and we need laws to protect the civilians just as much as we protect the police. I don't think all police are bad. I know good cops. I know good people who just want to come home to their kids. So you don't want everyone punished, but the people who are out here abusing their power or taking advantage of the position that they're in need to be prosecuted, just like if they were civilians, right? You're out there to save people and protect and serve, and not out there to take people's lives. And it is a thin line, but there needs to be some recourse for the people who are abusing this, right? Because we can't just have families losing their children like this, and there's no recourse for the loss of life, and there's no recourse for these officers who then go back to work and go back to their lives. I think on a national level, we need to come together and maybe start an organization, but not small. I think it has to be bigger than the NAACP, that kind of brings everyone together so that we can have discussion and people lobbying in the places where they need to lobby to get things changed.
I agree with that. And Ryan, what do we do? What do we need to do to move forward from this point?
Honestly, I think everybody kind of like touched on on everything. I would just say education is always going to be my main focus. So I think education,
Education? Okay.
educate. I should say educate
Educate us.
everybody,
Everybody.
everybody. Educate as many people as you can.
Okay. I
Period.
I agree with that. Reach one, teach one. Um, I agree with that, and I want to thank everybody for coming on to the panel. I kept you guys a lot longer than we were initially supposed to, but it was such rich conversation, and we were having such a good conversation and dialogue. I didn't want to cut anybody off, so I appreciate you guys for coming on. And again, I will say from my perspective, I think moving forward, we need to really come together. We need to come up with a plan, a strategy, sort of what Kent said. And I think Karen hit on this as well. Tell them what you want. I've been screaming this in the comment sections of so many posts that I've seen on Facebook. You have to be specific, because if you're asking someone who you're saying is an oppressor of you to fix it and they don't know, now they can come up with whatever they want, and then you're not going to be happy with it because you didn't have a choice in it and they didn't know exactly what you wanted. You need to be very specific about that. So I think we need to plan, I think we need to strategize, and I think we need to look long-sighted. A lot of us are looking short-sighted, like, oh, the end of 2020, Trump is out, things will change. That's not how that works. I think you definitely need to vote for the president because, again, we have things like we have a Supreme Court justice that's on her. I don't know what's going to happen with Ruth. So we need to make sure that we have somebody in there when it push comes to shove and we want to pass something on a national level as far as policing standards, and it goes through the Supreme Court, you know who sits on that Supreme Court. So if you really want to change something, make sure that you're reaching out to people, reach out, strategize, plan. Don't just kind of throw it to the wolves. So thank you so much for watching today. I appreciate all the comments and all of the dialogue back and forth. Again, thank you, everyone. You can reach Karen, you want to tell them how they can reach you?
Yeah, I am Karen L on Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, and my website, www.sayitloud.com, sayitloud.com.
And she's hilarious. So make sure that you listen to her podcast. And Alex, is any way that people wanted to reach out to you or reach you?
Yes. So I'm on Instagram at dancing_gaming. And also, well, that's probably the best way to reach me because on Facebook, get so many phone requests that I might not accept their notification. So
Okay.
just reach me on Instagram, dancing_gaming. And if you go on there, you'll see quite a bit of dancing for your entertainment.
Okay, and I said it before. It's not exotic. He's hip hop dancing.
Yeah, hip-hop dancing.
And Kent, how can people reach out to you?
Oh man, people can reach out to me on Facebook, Kent Library Guy Wade, and yes, I've worked in the library world for 17 years.
Oh wow.
So yeah, the library is my place. So Kent Library Guy Wade on Facebook. I also have a Snapchat. My Instagram, is I am Kent Wade. My email is iamkentwade@gmail.com. I'm a professional speaker, host, and workshop facilitator, shaking the fear of public speaking. So.
Okay, and the shirts, they can get a shirt.
Oh yeah. And right now the website will be done by the middle of June, right before Juneteenth. So happy early Juneteenth, everybody, which is June 19th. The website will be done by June 19th. But if you're interested, you can inbox me. And we can just tell me what size you wear. I press them myself. I do all the work myself.
Yeah, say it.
In the kitchen. So let me know what you want and we can work something out. Shake the fear.
All right. And Ryan, how can everybody reach out to you? And I know your podcast is coming soon.
Yes. You can reach out to me on Twitter at Chat and Friends.
I'm going to write it in there, Karen. I got it. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I said it on Twitter at Chat and Friends on Twitter.
My Twitter too. I hardly use my Twitter.
I'm getting back on there. I gotta get.
I hardly use Twitter, but I'm Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and then I have my website. SAYITHLOUD. So I have a podcast every Friday. It's streaming everywhere. It's pretty funny.
It is. It's extremely funny. So make sure that you listen to it. I know Ryan is coming out with a podcast as well. I know, Dave, you were really vibing with him. So make sure that you follow him on Twitter so you can know when that podcast drops so that you can support him. Thanks again, everybody, for doing this. I appreciate it. I learned a lot from everyone, and I think we had some great conversation, and now people will be able to have something to talk about. And we have to do this again. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.
I'm adding everybody.